We've also uploaded the documents, which you also should have received with your confirmation, but just in case, so you have them no matter what. Okay, in the interest of time and respecting everybody's time, I am going to get started. My name is Beth Gaston. I am the University Liaison with the University of Maryland. Just want to give a little bit of overview about the Animal and Plant Health Inspection Service. So for those of you, is anyone familiar with who we are, or would anybody like to take a guess? You can unmute your phone and let me know what you think and what, let others know what you think we do.
University Career Center, helping people in achieving their careers.
Yes, and the Animal and Plant Health Inspection Service, what do you think we do?
Yeah, my bad. Yeah, I don't exactly what that. My bad.
Well, we certainly help people with their careers. That's part of what we do in our HR department and our Center for Training and Development. That's a component of our work. We also work to protect American borders from plant pests and diseases. Valerie's on the phone with us, or right there, who helps with that. We also regulate plants improved through biotechnology. We protect United States agriculture from plant pests and diseases and animal diseases, and really make sure that we have a healthy American agriculture system here in the United States. Anyone else from APHIS want to add on to some of the work that we do? We protect animals too. That's one of the things that folks may not know about. We have an animal welfare program where we oversee animals who are used for research purposes or held in zoos who are used for breeding purposes. We also regulate a certain type of horse activity known as Tennessee walking horses or high step horses. They just had their big show of the year, which is essentially their Super Bowl. So we have a wide breadth of work. We also have extensive work in marketing and business services. So we have IT work, we have finance work, we have budget work, we have legislative and public affairs work, if that's the type of work that you like to do. I think that we could find a job for just about anybody in APHIS. Does that sound about right, Beth?
Yes, it does. In fact, I would add that we have about 8,300 people worldwide, all 50 states, all U.S. territories, and in about 35 countries internationally as well. And so based on all of that, for the students out there, what kind of majors do you think we hire? You can use the chat or you can unmute yourself to talk. Come on, don't speak at once. I might start calling on people.
The chat is less scary. Maybe they could start putting it in the chat.
Animal science, absolutely. Biologists, lots of biologists. What about the plant health side of things? What kind of majors do you think we'd be interested in addition to biologists? Absolutely, ecology, public health. I have a degree in public health. What else do we have out there?
Economics is a good one. We look at that a lot from both a trade perspective and rulemaking perspective.
As a clue for folks, we also have veterinary services, which is part of APHIS. So there's a clue there in terms of veterinary services. We have veterinarians.
Absolutely. And with the plant health, we have plant pathologists and entomologists. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to chime in with laboratorians, microbiologists, all kinds of specialists in that area because of all the laboratory services and diagnostic testing that we do.
Absolutely.
And also those of you who are in the lab or lab-based wanted to say it's not only applied. Inspection services sounds like it's very applied, but we do also hire and need a lot of scientists with molecular backgrounds.
Absolutely. And then what do you think it takes? Accountants, absolutely. What does it take to support an organization with 8,300 people and a 1.5 billion with a B operating budget? Yes, accountants and lawyers, absolutely. So pretty much no matter what your major, we probably have somebody with your major working for APHIS. And maybe not astrophysicists, but we have engineers. We have a lot of different majors. So if you're interested in working with us someday, please feel free to reach out to help match you up with people. And part of what today is about as well is getting to know some people as well as learning some skills while you do that. I just wanted to note that this event is co-sponsored by Manners, and we'll have the Manners president and president-elect speaking in a few minutes. But we also, in APHIS, we support Manners, the national conference, as well as the University of Maryland chapter. So we're doing a lot of work with a lot of different student clubs as well as in classrooms, and we're always happy to come and talk to your club if you're a member of a club. And last but not least, I know a lot of you are interested in jobs in the more near term versus just when you graduate, but keep an eye open, and you might want to create a profile on USA Jobs because the USDA internship programs, we announced those in the late fall, so November, December range is about when we announce the internships for the upcoming summer. So Ram and Jolie, I will let you take it away and talk a little bit about Manners.
Okay, hi everyone. I'm going to share my screen. Okay, are you able to see my screen? Okay. So I am part of Manners, which stands for Minorities in Agriculture, Natural Resources, and Related Sciences. Thank you all for coming to the event. We're very excited to be working with everyone today. And we are co-sponsoring this event with APHIS, also really grateful for that opportunity. So my name is Ramya. I'm president of UMCP Manners, and our president-elect, Jolie, she's also going to be talking today. Again, we just want to welcome you to this presentation and also to the Manners family. From our executive board this year, we wouldn't be able to do any of the work we do without William, our treasurer, and Michaela, our secretary, so also want to give credits to them. So who are we? We are individuals of all sorts of majors. It doesn't have to be just in agriculture. We have communications majors, psychology majors involved in our club, any major you can really think of, sort of like what APHIS was touching on. And most of us are pre-professionals, and we just want to self-improve, whether that's in professional skills or building a network, and all are welcome. You can be an undergraduate or a graduate student, minority or non-minority status, it doesn't matter, we welcome everyone. And I'm going to pass it off to Jolie now to talk a little bit about the specific skills we try to improve. Jolie?
Ram, Jolie indicated her audio might not be working.
Oh, okay. All right, that's okay. Okay, that's okay. I can just take it from here, no worries. Yeah, so we work on a number of skills, including workshops like this one. We also help you with resume writing. We do some mock interview skills. We also network through regional and national conferences in the fall and spring semesters. So the picture on the right is a picture from our national conference last year. And at these conferences, there are a ton of networking and internship opportunities through career fairs, so they're really useful to attend. And our club meetings this year will be Wednesdays and Thursdays, 4 to 5 p.m. and over a virtual setting. And for more updates and to keep notice of our events, you can follow us on social media at UMD Manners or always email us with any questions. And this semester, these are some of the organizations we are working with, and we're very excited to sponsor a number of events with them. Thank you, guys.
Terrific. And I am going to turn this over now to Bernadette Juarez. I will let her introduce herself while I upload the presentation.
Okay, I think that's fixed. It's good to see everybody. As Beth mentioned, I'm Bernadette. I spoke a little bit earlier. I am the Deputy Administrator for the Biotech Program in the Animal and Plant Health Inspection Service. Before that, I was the Deputy Administrator for the Animal Care Program. Before that, I was the Director for Investigative and Enforcement Services, which, Beth, we forgot to mention we need investigators in APHIS too. And then before that, I was an attorney in the Office of the General Counsel prosecuting cases on behalf of the Animal and Plant Health Inspection Service. And to do all of those things, I undertook many interviews. So I'm here to visit with you today to talk a little bit about the interview process that you can expect as you navigate your career. And we'll talk about behavioral interviews in particular. Okay, next slide. We'll talk about how to prepare for an interview. We'll talk about the actual interview itself, and then we'll talk about what to do at the end of the interview. Next slide, most important thing about preparing for an interview before anything else is preparation. It's the key to success. So please, please take this very seriously. The first thing you should do is read the job application. Make sure that you understand what's in the job application and identify any questions that you might have during the interview or that you may wish to have answered before the interview to make sure that you're prepared. Make sure that you read the competency list that we provided you in the handout. Beth mentioned that it's also in the chat box. Most of the interviews are going to focus on the types of skills and competencies that we need for you to successfully carry out your jobs within APHIS. And one of the things that's really important when you're looking at these skills, and I'm thinking about this not only in the context of your interview, but also developing your resume, oftentimes you'll see a job announcement posting and it'll describe what we call statements of qualified experience. And sometimes people just will almost copy and paste those statements of qualified experience just right into the resume and assume that that will be enough to help them get the job. And what I want you to know is that that's not enough. That what we're looking for is that you have that specialized experience, that you have the ability to actually apply it. That's the competency, demonstrating the competency and using the skill, and that you're able to get good results from that. And if you think about that, that flow, having the skill, applying the skill, and demonstrating the results, it's going to help you prepare for responding to questions in your interview. We provided you with a laundry list of questions that we're likely to ask based on situations that you've probably experienced, whether at school or in a part-time job or in a full-time job that you might have. And in connection with those experiences, we're going to ask you to describe the situation, tell us what the task was that you had to accomplish, make sure that you tell us all of the actions that you took. These should be I statements. I did this, I did that. If there's a we, it's very difficult for us to understand what you actually did. So we want to make sure that all of the statements that you make, the representations that you make, demonstrate how you have the competency and, most importantly, the results you accomplished by applying that competency. So when you have some of these stories put together, so you're gonna take your questions, you're gonna start fleshing out some of these stories, and then it's time to practice your questions. And you should first start, I think, by outlining the answers that you would likely give to your questions. And then after that, it's important to practice just like we are today, with a friend or a couple of friends asking you questions and you practicing responses and receiving feedback from your friends until you are absolutely sick of practicing, and then you should practice some more. The last thing that you should do when you're preparing for an interview is think about the questions that you want to ask the interviewer at the end of the interview. And having just done about 6 or 7 interviews within the past couple of weeks, I can tell you that answering with, well, I think I should have looked at the website, or yeah, I had some question, but I forgot, is not the way that you want to end an interview. So start giving some thought to some of the questions that you might ask. It might involve the questions from the job application that we talked about earlier, or it might be some probing questions that you ask based on what you've learned about the program itself. Next slide. During the interview itself, make sure that you allow plenty of time to prepare for the interview. Not only traveling if it's an in-person interview, which may be unlikely, but also allow time to prepare yourself so that you're not in a rush. I personally am always in a rush, so it's something that I really have to build into the schedule. Make sure that you allow yourself time to either beforehand find the building and the location or test the connection, whatever it is that you need to do in order to be completely settled in advance of the interview is what you should do before the interview. Once you arrive at the interview, this will help you feel more relaxed because interviews are highly ritualized processes. We aim to make them as completely the same as possible from interviewee to interviewee. So this means that the panel will likely be sitting before you. They'll likely read a brief script or narrative statement that describes the job that you're interviewing for, that describes the interview process itself, that introduces themselves, and then they will take turns asking you questions. You may feel a little unnerved by having 4 to 5 people looking at you as they probe you with questions. So make sure that you get plenty of practice so that you feel confident and settled in your interview. Sometimes interview questions can be 2 parts, and they can be a little bit tricky to remember. So it's important to have a way to write down your questions if you need to during the interview. And as you have thoughts in your mind on how you may wish to respond to those questions using the STAR format that we talked about, jot down a couple of notes to trigger your memory. As you begin to answer questions, you'll start describing the situation or the task, and you may forget some of the actions that you had in mind. So by taking a couple minutes right after the question is asked to write down a couple of notes about what you want to include in the response, you'll make sure that you hit all of the points that you want to make. Again, make sure that you use the STAR format that we talked about. You're going to describe the situation, the task, the action, and the result. And be prepared for some potential follow-up questions from the panelists. Although it's unlikely, it could happen. So make sure that you're listening and paying attention. The other thing that I want to make sure that you're paying attention to is the time. Oftentimes there is a finite amount of time set for an interview, and you'll have a certain number of questions. Generally, interviews are scored by how well you respond to each question. As a result, it's really important that you answer all of the questions in an interview. If you start down a rabbit hole on question 1, 2, or 3, you might not get to question 4 or 5 and you'll lose points. So make sure that you have a good sense of how many questions may be asked in the interview and allocate your time and use it wisely. Next slide. At the end, generally the interviewees will ask whether you have any questions. Do you have any questions for us? Make sure that you have one and make it a good one. Make sure that you ask a question that you developed while you were looking at the job description, or ask a question about the general work culture, or ask a question about something that you've seen in the news about the organization or the agency. make sure that it's a thoughtful question that isn't something that could be readily answered by simply scanning their website. They will have expected that you have already read the website and know that information. Also, don't ask questions about pay, the pay range, vacations, or time off. If and when you get the job, you can ask those types of questions. Next slide. A couple of notes about COVID-19. The biggest difference we have at the moment are virtual interviews versus in-person interviews. Make sure that you are aware of the environment that you're in for the interview. You have the opportunity to test your camera, make sure that you have your lighting correct, make sure that you have the background that you want to portray. If you're going to use one of those fake backdrops, make sure that you choose one that's a good, suitable, neutral background that's not distracting for interviews. Make sure that you test your camera angle and make sure that you test your lighting before the interview so that once things get started, you're ready to go. This was a huge factor for a couple of recent interviewees that I saw. One did not know how to operate their camera, and another one had terrible backlight behind them. So these are very real situations that present themselves. I know that you probably have a lot of experience using your cameras, but testing them and being prepared is very important. Next slide. We'll have some time for questions, and if you don't have questions at this point, we'll give a few minutes to type them into the chat box just in case. But if you don't, we'll break out, we'll do some practice, and then we're going to come back together and discuss what you learned.
Great. And Michael, thank you very much. We are ready for the breakout rooms. And it looks like there'll be 2 to 3 students per APHIS staff member in the breakout rooms, and we'll have about 45 minutes to go through. So that should be 3, maybe even 4 questions each. People are joining back in to the main session. It might be a little bit longer until everybody gets back in. So we will give it a moment of uncomfortable silence as people repopulate.
Oh, Beth.
Oh.
Beth, we were having such a good time. It went by too fast.
Oh.
It did. Hafa, you were doing so well on that last question. I'm sorry we didn't get to finish it.
Oh.
Very nice.
Thank you.
Okay.
Short.
I know, we got kicked out.
Yeah,
All
did
right.
we really get 45 minutes?
I don't think so.
No, we had estimated 45 minutes based on 3 or 4 people per room, and since we had usually two students per room, we cut it a little shorter.
Yes.
Okay, so we got the
Um,
answers, but we couldn't get to the feedback in my room.
Oh, okay. All right. So from the students or the group, please, feel free to unmute yourself and speak out or use the chat. Are there any questions or comments or thoughts?
Beth, the one thing I'll mention is I don't know that the attachments made it to the students, and it seems like it was difficult getting them through the Zoom session. So if we could just make sure that all of the students get the handouts again, it'd be really helpful so that they can practice. In terms of my experience with my students, instant application of the feedback and on really, really strong development of responses on the second go around. So I felt like they certainly understand the STAR method and were very adept to making adjustments and moving forward. So thank you for your work.
Oh, excellent. And I will actually ask Michael Maiden through the Career Center has your information from when you registered for the students. So we will get that out to you.
Hey Beth, I also said that we had Diego in our group, and if he wanted to reach out directly, he could to after he practices over those questions, because it seems like they got it, but at the same time they need more practice so that it sounds natural and that it comes across complete. I think that was the struggle there was completely going through the STAR method and actually getting to that result and making that bridge between what position they're looking for versus the work that they've done. And I know I've experienced that a lot with veterans. Veterans tend to say this stuff, but it's like, okay, you didn't relate it to the job. And so I would love to continue the conversation with whoever wants to help them understand how to really bridge the answer with the results.
Yeah,
Excellent.
I
Oh,
would echo what they said, and what Bernadette also said is the students have been picking up the STAR method, and I really liked the way that the students with me were actually answering the questions. They did follow the whole structure and came out with pretty good examples. One thing which I was suggesting to them would help is as you are developing the stories or thinking of the stories to put into your behavioral interview answers, try to relate to the position. So yes, you may have a lot of stories about failures and how you came out of it, but would this be a situation that you may face in the position? If you have a story like that, that I think would be more effective. So that really putting it in context, why should I hire you when there are 99 other people I can hire? That's something that has that I feel really helps through the interview process.
excellent. And Byron, you've got a comment?
Yes. So the person that I worked with, or sorry, the interviewee that I worked with, Jolie Kuros. Excuse me if I'm saying your surname incorrectly. Wait, actually, let me ask. How do you say your last name correctly, Jolie?
Yeah, it's Kuros.
Kuros. Okay.
Mhm.
I just want to say she did an excellent job with the STAR method. And I was giving her feedback before we had to come back into our room. So one is that she was at our session from last year, which she really took from. And with interviewing her this time, she had the STAR method down as if it was a computer chip. So I just wanted to definitely give a highlight to Jolie because it was something that I actually try to work on when I interview and when I have interviewed. So yeah, Jolie, great job. And I think for everyone, just some things to have in mind as we give you or as you receive the behavioral interview questions, just having a couple things in mind, running through those, and yeah, just trying to commit those to memory because I could actually follow Jolie's step by step as she was doing the situation, task, action, and result without her having to say, this is the situation, this is the task, this action, this is the result. So just a highlight.
Thank
Great.
you.
And one thing I do want to emphasize to all of the students is that with this process and using the forms, which will make sure you get, there's a feedback form that will help you give feedback to each other. And practice is so important. As Bernadette said, practice and practice till you're sick of practicing and then practice some more. Work with your friends and practice with each other. So you have a network right here that you just established of other people who can give you feedback and work with you.
And just as a strategy, again, everybody has their own way of thinking through things. But what I have found to be helpful is, especially in behavioral interview questions, there are situations where you may have come across, there might be a story somewhere that you don't remember. So before you go to the interview, as Bernadette was saying, prepare, don't leave it for the last minute. And while you're preparing, I like to jot down little points as stories that I could probably refer to, answering the sort of questions. When you'll get the paperwork, you will get a list of potential questions. It's not necessary that you'll get exactly the same questions, but those stories can be applied to multiple situations. So just think through the different stories you could fit in, either to show your flexibility or to show your resilience or your integrity. These at the time of an interview, especially when you're stressed and you have this firing squad of 5 to 6 people in front of you, it's hard to think straight and to remember things. So if you can have that made up in your mind, it will certainly help you a lot, in addition to certainly that practice that Beth is saying. Very, very important.
Yes. And if I can add, one thing that historically I think people are weak on is the result. So often it comes out, and so we met our goal, or so we finished the assignment. No, we finished the assignment and we got an A, and it was the best paper that anyone had ever seen on the planet, and we got an award from the university for it. So brag a little bit. This is your chance. And Byron, you wanted to say something. Okay, sorry, your hand is raised.
This is Terry. Can I say something quickly?
Oh, yes, please.
Oh, yes,
absolutely.
Thank you. You know, I won't talk about the person that Valerie and I worked with, but she was incredible. It's the one thing to remember is that people are people when you interview them, right? They've all sat in your chairs and they've been in the same situation as you are, right? So relatable. You know, sometimes those stories, you think about some of the amazing work you've done, but be personal. You know, it's a time to connect, because as much as you're being interviewed, you also are interviewing them too. So it's a chance to have that story and kind of this STAR method that we talk about. It takes you through these hurdles, right? But don't make it so robotic that it's really just helping you tell that story and hitting those points, right? But show that person that you are. It's being relatable is something I would just want to reinforce. And that's my dog joining the conversation with us.
He's relatable.
I liked your question, Byron. How's it going from the student perspective? We've heard a lot from the coaches. Now we'd like to hear from the students.
I thought it was really helpful. I found it to be really constructive, especially about the results part. The person who I was working with told me to really spell out the context as well, which I find myself skimming just because I was telling her I felt like I was kind of rambling. And so I have a tendency to kind of like cut back a little bit. So I think for me, it was helpful in understanding that I need to really spell out the context, because obviously the people who are interviewing you were not in that situation. And so you need to really paint a vivid picture, but also be really succinct and you don't want to ramble, but you want to give them enough to understand the situation. So. Yeah.
And one of the things that Mary's reminded us of is that oftentimes the panelists may not have a copy of your of your resume. So make sure that when you're answering the question, you don't assume that the panelists know anything about you. Really flesh out that context and lay the foundation, and assume that they don't know anything about you at all or anything that's in your resume.
Yeah, my interviewer slash interview buddy who I was working with said that, and I was really surprised, because in all of the interviews I've ever had, everyone has always had my resume. So I was really surprised to hear that people wouldn't have my resume. So yeah, that was really new for me.
Some people might have your resume, but they may have not read it, which is another factor. Having and reading are also two different things.
Yeah.
And actually, I've been in government since 2004. And I didn't learn about that until maybe 4 years into my career. So it was a huge surprise to me, too, that they didn't read my resume or even have it.
Okay, any last thoughts, comments, questions? I did post my email information into the chat. Any of the students out there, and certainly any of my colleagues, if there's ever any questions you have about APHIS, what we do, or ways we can help you, please let me know. We also have handouts on how to create a profile in USA Jobs if you haven't been through a Career Center session on that already. And we have people lined up to help give you feedback on your resumes as well. So please don't hesitate to reach out, and it's beth.e.gaston@usda.gov.
Byron, back to you.
Yeah, three things. One is I think it was Miaza or Miza. Excuse me if I'm saying.
It's okay.
How do I say it?
Maza?
Mazda. What you were saying about not, possibly the interviewer not having the resume in front of you. One of the things that I have learned is part of coming prepared is just coming with extra resumes just in case anyone on the interview panel does not, someone on the interview panel does not have your resume. So just kind of a tip that, can help if, somebody's scrambling or maybe they're running from one meeting to another and maybe they left it on their desk. If you have something in front of you that you can hand them, that can be helpful. That's one. The second thing is, and this is specifically for people who may tend to rush, is try to take a breath and slow down. And that way you are, one, relaxing, but also you're taking up the space that you need and trying not to think about just getting done with the interview for the sake of saving everyone's time. The time that is in that interview is time that is built for you. So try to do the best that you can to hopefully not rush through, but to take your time, and that way you can convey the information that you need. And then the third, and I was telling Jolie this, the third thing is if you're connecting with anyone on LinkedIn before or after the interview, to make sure, or I recommend that you send a message or you add a note with that connection. So that way, when you ask someone to be part of their network or to connect with them, now your message is a part of their inbox. So if they want to refer back to you, instead of looking through all their contacts, they can actually just go to their messages folder, and that makes it much easier for them to remember you, what the context was, and why you wanted to connect. So just those three things.
Since you just brought up, if I may just add one little thing, since you brought up the issue of not having resumes, which I've been surprised, but I've heard some places that is done on purpose to keep the interview neutral. So what I would suggest is keep an elevator pitch. Normally there is kind of an icebreaker in the beginning where you have an opportunity to say something about yourself. Make sure it's a solid nugget that gives them a background, and that helps even if they haven't read it or they don't have your resume, to lay the field of where you are and where your examples are coming from, in case you don't have time to give context of everything.
Well, Beth, this has been fabulous. We appreciate all the work that you've done with the University of Maryland and all the work the University of Maryland has done to bring us together today. We've had a great turnout. I don't know what the overall count ended up being, but we certainly are thrilled to have this type of turnout, especially it's a great time of the year to start thinking about interviewing skills. It's the fall. We have lots of work to do, lots of jobs and internships to land. So good luck to everybody.
Yep, great. Well, and thank you very much. And we look forward to interacting with you, perhaps some of you for many years to come. So thank you, and thanks for being part of the event and coming out this evening. All right, take care, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.